Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the final edition of Business as Usual by Louis Blow. First off, we'll head into the table of contents. We'll have an intro, a brief description of what I looked at, which happens to be chapter 14 and 15. Then you'll get my appreciation and my conclusion. The intro. So I chose to look at chapter 14, which is about managing communication, and chapter 15, which is about control. Now, why did I choose these chapters? I chose 14 because managing communication and how you talk to people, how you get the message across within your company is very important. And the control aspect of management is also very important, not just why you should control, but how you should control to have the most effective and efficient results. Now, the premise of my project is, we'll head into that in the brief description. I want to sort of pretend that I'm a small business, and I think that this is very apropos not only as a student but for our potential future career. So that's my goal as well, to try and make connections here between real life and the textbook. How I achieved this? Well, I simply looked at small businesses online, saw how maybe they could benefit from it, as well as looking at the textbook and the PowerPoints and finding out how I could apply this to a small business. So, in this point, we have Theory and Reality for Chapter 14. In the textbook, Chapter 14 explains the role that perception plays in communication, outlines how managers can have effective one-on-one interactions, and in reality it says that there's a defensive bias, which is a common occurrence, and it goes into detail about the risks associated with types of communication. I won't talk too much about the theory part because I think it's relatively self-explanatory. However, this part, the reality part, the main thing that came out for me is the defensive bias. And this is something that I think is very common. And I say this because I think that I tend to do this a lot. So maybe it's just me, but I think people could benefit from knowing that defensive bias is a thing and fixing it. So what is it? Defensive bias is when, let's say, you put out an idea and then somebody is trying to give their idea, but it sort of shuts yours down. You're automatically going to want to defend your idea without even listening to see if theirs might be a better idea. So to have an effective management of communication, it's important to start looking at things that you do yourself as well as that people do around you to see how you can counter that and come up with more effective discussions and communication tactics with the people in your team and business. So this is Theory and Reality continued. Now we're looking at chapter 15. In the textbook, chapter 15 talks about the basic control processes and the behaviors and outcomes a manager may choose to control. It also talks about the types of control that can be utilized. In reality, chapter 15 where sort of encompasses what values you need to decide to control. So what's important to you in a business? What kind of values do you want your clients to see? Do you want the whole world to see? So for Google, they pride themselves on having these values for their employees. They just have this amazing work environment where everybody feels welcome and everybody, they work at their own pace, but they have to get things done. And so that's a value that everybody can see, and it adds overall value to the business as well. You know who you're dealing with when you deal with them. And lastly, they discuss waste prevention as well as an important part of today's management. So often now we're seeing in the operations management class as well that we have to try and prevent waste to try and get to a thing called lean management. This is when you really focus on the things that the client can appreciate and that make your company effective and not on all the little frills around that. Next, we look at theory versus reality. So for chapter 14, the textbook and reality differ for the type of business you have, the depth of information in the book, and the use of specific types. So for the type of business you have, there's so many different industries and different kinds of businesses that you really sort of have to tailor everything in the textbook to fit what your business is. Some would require more modification than others. The depth of information in the book This is simple. It's a book. It can't hold all the information in the world. It's not a one-stop solution for any business problems, but it's a good start. And finally, the use of specific types, which they use a lot in the book. They have all these types, like, oh, there's 4 types of management, or there's 6 types of this and that. And in reality, there's way more types. It's so hard to stereotype different kinds of management. So you have to be careful with that as well. Next, for chapter 15, where theory and reality differ, is the difficulty to implement strategies, measures of quality, and use of standards and benchmarking. Now, this is the use of standards and benchmarking is actually very similar. I put it there because in reality, this is something that's used a lot. Companies always want to know where they stand according to competitors or compared to industry standards. Measures of quality is something that we often forget to do. It's important to look at what you're producing. Is it good? Could it be better? Or can we make it for less expensive? And finally, the difficulty to implement strategies. In the textbook, they often make it seem easier than it actually is. So in real life, it can be really hard to implement strategies, especially with a team that's new. Finally, my appreciation. What did I like? I liked the overall project. I've always sort of enjoyed doing these. I mean, yes, what I didn't like, they can get repetitive, but you know what? It's not that hard, and I do feel like I learned. So my overall appreciation, I'm going to put it at an 8.8 out of 10. And would I recommend it? Yes, I would. Conclusion. Although there are certain differences between the book and real life, the book is an excellent indicator of what to expect in the future. So if you want to be a small business owner in the future, if you know how to effectively communicate, and if you know how to control your enterprise, it's a very, very good start. Finally, here are my sources. And I have a question slide. If you have anything, let me know. Thank you very much.